What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Paranormal Council, where we are going to be discussing collective consciousness, and we can debate it a little bit. We're going to try to define what we all think about it, maybe how it connects to paranormal, and of course, we'll get in some nuanced stuff, Zeitgeist. Guys, I'm super excited about the show, so if you want to start learning about and answering questions like, are we all connected? Then you're not going to want to go anywhere. And also like and subscribe for all of you 40%ers out there that are not subscribed when you watch this. So make sure you click and share. That helps to grow us, which we want to get to more people. So, guys, welcome. And it's good to see the full council back in action this week. So I'm excited, guys. Collective consciousness. Are we all connected? That's going to be a big question. And so for those of you, I'm just going to kind of say out there, collective consciousness means that basically we're all connected and maybe some group think. But there's debate out there. Some people don't believe it. Some people think we're all just floating around, just physical meat bags. Not a lot of spiritual stuff to it. So let's start out by who wants to go first on tonight's group think collective consciousness talk.
Chanel, how would you crack at it? We haven't heard from her in 2 weeks.
That's true. Sorry. Yeah, about that. Life happens. And so sorry. But yeah, I personally believe that yes, we are all connected. And even us sitting here, this is the entire reason, is the internet. Previously, throughout history, this is the first time where you've been able to have access to information from across the globe immediately. I was watching the news this morning and I heard about what happened in Great Britain and the royal family today. And I was like, oh, I would have had no clue about that probably, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Of course, that was real little then. But even still, if I were an adult 30 years ago, I would have had to wait until the evening news, or I would have had to have waited until it was in the newspaper. And it was instant. And I immediately, as soon as I heard about what was going on over there, I hopped on my phone. I'm like, well, what did he do? And there you go. Boom. Had the information right there. That in itself is global consciousness, not connected consciousness, but collective consciousness.
Did you see the picture they put on the news as the photograph right after he got released from police custody? His eyes are like this, and he's mouth is agape. He just walked out of his first, body cavity search. It was something he'd never experienced before in his life, and he was not feeling it. So
now I got to go look it up. I have no idea what you guys are talking about.
I don't know if we can talk about it. I don't know if that would.
Prince Andrew?
Yeah.
Prince Andrew was arrested because, he was in the Epstein files. And he got accused of doing some really nasty stuff with young girls, but that's not what he got arrested for. He got arrested for divulging top secret information to Jeffrey Epstein, which is against, British law. It doesn't really matter where you fall in the pecking order of royalty. You give up top secrets, and that's serious stuff. They're not going after him for diddling little girls. They're going after him for divulging secrets. So.
Right.
The outcome method.
So, all right. So, collective consciousness, let's kind of keep it, I definitely don't want to get derailed into a whole nother, that's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah.
We'd be like a current affair podcast or something, right? But as much as I love talking about all that stuff, but yes, collective consciousness, guys. So one thing I kind of want to use in that scenario is and I know Stacey's going to get into the zeitgeist part of the culture part of it, but that group think of and that influence, but are we all connected, right? Things that happen, so for example, let's take it back even before internet. Okay, let's go back ancient times. Does collective consciousness play a role in the fact that we had pyramids, for example, and similar architecture and iconic, 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 iconography. You know what I'm talking about? Iconography. I'm saying the damn word wrong. Hieroglyphics, things like that. We had similar stuff across the globe when there wasn't internet. Okay, now you could get into aliens and stuff like that, but is there that collective, consciousness that spans across the globe? Things that people were doing and acting, evolving the same. I want to throw that out there.
Well, science actually kind of says yes. I mean, they don't have a theory on exactly why, but they did an experiment called the 100 Monkeys experiment, where they had these rhesus monkeys on deserted islands, completely cut off from each other, and they would throw coconuts onto the islands to feed them. There was no other food source, so they had to figure out how to eat those coconuts. And for the longest time, one island was the only one where the monkeys had actually figured it out, and they realized that once they reached 100 monkeys on that one island that figured out how to eat those coconuts, every other island with monkeys on it figured out how to eat the coconuts. It was sort of this subconscious transmission of data that these monkeys figured it out after they reached this precipice of knowledge amongst a certain group of 100 monkeys. Suddenly everybody knew. All of them knew. And that kind of goes to the whole ancient civilization thing. Now, scientists also say, well, pyramids are obvious. They're a platonic solid. They can, there's only so many shapes. There's only 5 shapes, and that's the most logical one to build a giant thing with giant rocks that are 3 and 4 tons each, because it's a triangle. Okay, whatever, dude. It is something that each civilization has taken up because it held some kind of significance at their core. Nothing to do with geometry and platonics and the platonic solids and all this other kind of stuff. They try to explain it away with because, well, they have no explanation. So, yes, science says that it's there, but they haven't any idea what it's about. And they're trying to figure that out now that they're building artificial intelligence, because they don't want artificial intelligence to suddenly become one symbiotic blob. They want to keep it under control, and they don't really know what intelligence is or consciousness, and they're really, really afraid they're creating their golem. If you don't know what a golem is, it's something that was inanimate that becomes animate and conscious. Like the golem is in Jewish mythology, it was made out of clay, and they had these spells. They conjured it into animation, and then it turned on its creators. The story of Frankenstein is where that came. And that's what we're doing right now with AI. It's creating a golem, and they're kind of freaked out about it. So.
Yeah, Jen, what do you think? So you're next in line, I think, for your thoughts toward collective consciousness.
Well, first, before I jump into that, I'm going to say hi to Jasmine. She's 9. She's adorable, and she loves the paranormal. Anyway, yeah, so when I was thinking about this for tonight, I was thinking about all the different ways in which we're interconnected and how that might affect group thinking, right? And from the very base level, when you get into things like the Earth's vibrational energy and how that affects our moods and how our bodies respond to it, we all are experiencing very similar, if not the same, forces just from our environment, right? The electromagnetic field can vary based on where you are on Earth, but it's similar, right? Mm-hmm. And so you'll find a whole area that is highly affected by a vibrational energy change with similar emotions that are affected by that vibrational change, right? So if you have a whole area or a whole large group of people that's, depressed, more fearful, more paranoid. It's going to affect the human behaviors in that area, right? And decision making in that area, and trends in that area, and what hits the algorithm in that area, and for that time period, right? So, how does that affect how we are connected consciously? Because that's more of an unconscious for most people, right? We don't pay attention to the vibrational forces and how they affect us every day, for the
Right.
most part. A lot of us are like, "Ugh, why do I just feel down today? Why am I like yesterday? I was angry all day, didn't know why." Guess what? Go look at the chart on the Earth's vibrational energy yesterday, and guess what? Explains a lot.
I was
Um,
also angry yesterday. Side note. Just a moment
you were
here.
too.
Yeah.
See, I mean, we're not that far apart. In fact, we're closer than any of us in here. So, when we talk about how it affects large groups of people, we have to also consider that, right? And also considering people are talking about this now awakening based off of these vibrational energies, this collective awakening that's happening for spiritual reasons. And then if you look at that, you're looking at the uptick in higher vibrational spikes coming from, that area between the Earth and outer space, and how that affects us. So if the higher energies are coming out through all of these different spikes, and more people are feeling the aftermath of that, so to speak, right? And then you talk about the 7 levels of consciousness, the highest being enlightened, and the awakening phases, right? Of course, you're going to start to see a trend, a connectedness of people. And through the internet and things like that, more of us are able to access each other, so it becomes more of a force to be reckoned with, so to speak. So, there's so many different ways for us to look at how we're connected. Is it a spiritual connection? Is it a vibrational connection? Is it because of how we're geographically located and forces of nature? And sorry, I just saw the post about Jasmine. But yeah, so, and even looking at things like from spiritual aspects of it, there's all different types of symbolism and numerology and spirituality and Christianity, and all of those commonalities also bring people together.
Right.
So what part of it is the consciousness and the levels of consciousness, and how does it all work?
Yeah. No, I think that. So, I think that one thing I've noticed in a lot of my research, and whether it's different religions and overall, is there seems to, like, one common thing that a lot of people kind of agree on a basic level is that we seem to be sort of like made up of like 3 main parts, right? The flesh, the soul, some type of soul that makes us unique, and the spirit body. And the spirit body and the soul are sort of connected and intertwined. I personally it seems as if the spirit body almost is what connects us to, like, what I call the Earth network. It's like, if you think of it like a cell phone service, like a cell phone tower, um, you know, we are all connected to the Earth network through our spirit body. This is, of course, now, like what you were saying, Jen, possibly through frequencies and vibrations and energies. Even there's been in research with the Schumann resonance, because of the similarities between our alpha waves and the Schumann resonance, things like that. They've done experiments where they take away those Earth sort of resonances, and it can mess up people a little bit. So there is experiments done with those things, and so there is something that we are connected to this Earth. Now, whether you want to believe that we move on, the Bible talks about getting a new spirit body, right? So that might mean that we leave the Earth network and we go to the next network and we get a new spirit body. Now we're connected to that service, the heavenly network, whatever you want to, however you want to believe it. But there does seem to be that connection. So yes, of course, when Earth, or when the planetary stuff retrogrades, all these things sometimes are changing up frequencies or resonances and things like that, I think yes, we're like a tuning fork, right? We're gonna adjust or feel those things. Some people more than others. Maybe the alignment. Maybe you guys were in that alignment. Maybe it was females or something, and maybe a lot of females were mad yesterday. I don't know. It could have been a female thing, but either way, um, obviously some people feel those things differently. But I do think that yes, I think that we are connected in that way, and of course, you can go deeper and say that's why when you do investigations and stuff like that. I think this is all it's all connected. Right now, as far as consciousness and that, I think we can dive into, like, I think that's where you start seeing a difference in the overall collectiveness of us connected through that earth or that spiritual network. But I think consciously, or even on some subconscious stuff, I think that's when we get into maybe like what we call the zeitgeist, right? Where it's more of the cultural overall feelings of everything. And that's where you start seeing influence through whatever's going on in the culture, whether the people's mentality throughout like World War II, when news would spread and all that stuff. People had different mentalities and how they were maybe talking to people and treating each other. And nowadays, the way we treat each other and talk to each other because of all the current affairs and stuff like that, I think that's more of that overall, that zeitgeist, that cultural sort of influence, sometimes even unsaid, just things that are happening out there. And all of a sudden, you got people being affected in ways, and they didn't even know. They didn't even know what was going on out there in the world, but they picked up those clues from other people. So I could go on about it, but like I said, that was kind of my 2 cents on connecting some of that.
I think that
Well,
Jen brought up a. Oh, sorry, Stacey. Jen
well, I
brought
was just going to say on Tuesday we had an eclipse, and it was late in the day on Tuesday. So what you were feeling yesterday was probably the hangover from an eclipse, because you're dealing with a major shift in energies altogether during any eclipse. Even though it was on the other side of the planet is where it was taking place, it doesn't matter. It matriculates.
Yeah.
Chanel, what was you going to say?
I was going to talk about Jen had used the word trend when she was talking. That is also a form of like the zeitgeist, because trends and social norms and things like that, like they are, especially nowadays, constantly changing. Like my kid, for instance, is using the new word like peak to mean like awesome. Like he's like, "Mom, this song's peak." That was last night. He and I were in the car, and he's like, "This song's peak," and I'm like, "Oh, that's what we're saying now." Like that is an example of just zeitgeist, right? Because these
So
kids,
6-7.
yeah, and the 6-7 thing. Oh my gosh, like, you
I don't care. I refuse to use whatever the hell that is.
It's constantly evolving though. And the funny thing is that when you look at like those social type things, right, the ones that determine that are now our younger Gen Zs and our Gen Alphas. They're the ones that determine what is the latest like trend or the latest cool thing. And it's like, we're going to get into that, I think. And we are. But yeah, like that's all part of it. And so they could be doing something over in like India, and it's going to be like cool and trending on TikTok, and next thing you know, our kids over here are going to be doing it too. And it's just all a part of it. It's really kind of cool how it's interconnected.
Okay.
Right. Well, when we talk about things like, we're talking about vibrations, we're talking about energies,
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about all these different things, quantum sciences and theories, right? How they all relate and the effects that they have on other things. So when we're talking about things like how do the vibrational energies affect us and how do trends affect us, right? What we're really seeing is this whole idea of energies going back and forth. right? Excitement about new trends, new ideas, creativity. It's all just this back and forth transfer of information, data, energies. And so that kind of goes into the question, of can collective consciousness affect people having similar experiences? Absolutely. And in paranormal, we talk about it all the time. You bring a certain energy in with you, right? If you bring in a low vibration to a location that has something negative there, right? It's already got a lower vibration. You're bringing in more lower vibration. It's going to start affecting you physically, mentally, spiritually, all those things and that's what we call open, right? Whereas when you bring in a higher vibrational energy, you have things more like protection and awareness. And all of those are your different levels of consciousness, right? So when you're looking at your different levels of consciousness, people often like get confused. They think, oh, what is consciousness really? Like my ability to think? Yes, but it's your awareness level, right? All it really is your awareness and your ability to utilize the information and data that you're aware of in your environment, your history, your education, all the things around you. And so I went down 4 rabbit trails in my head all at one time with that one.
Right?
Um,
There's so much to go, though. There's
it's
so much to
spinning,
go
and I'm
on.
like, oh wait, where am I now? Um, yeah. So when in paranormal, right, multiple people can have multiple experiences. You can have the same experience. I mean, how many times have we been on investigations and something happens in one room, but it also happens in another room? They're totally different people, right? And then you have the energies. It's like, wait a minute, is it the same spirit in 2 places? Is it a connection of energies between those places? How does this work, right?
I think when you're looking smaller and you look at like investigations, right? So we've seen it happen where you'll have one of 2 things can happen in that scenario. Either A, it's because, let's be real here, we're in the paranormal field, people like to put on a show sometimes. So that can happen. Or it's a matter, exactly like you said, Jen. It could maybe be the same spirit messing with both, or it could be 2 different ones. Because when you look at energy, right, mass is neither created nor destroyed. The energy that is here is the same energy that's been here, right? And so, getting more into physics than consciousness with that, but like legitimately though, they can play off of each other, right? And spirits, especially if they're intelligent, they can interact. And so you can have the exact same experience. We've seen it happen. I don't think, Jen, you were not on that investigation. No, you were there the night before. I was thinking of Octagon Hall last year when simultaneously we're on 2 different floors. Yeah, you had went the night before. That was it.
Yep.
And like at basically the exact same time, while one of my teammates was in the basement with a group of people, I was up on the 3rd floor, or 2nd floor in Mary Elizabeth's room, and we all were getting affected at the exact same time because the energy was just off, and we knew that it was going to be an interesting night that night, and it was. But so yeah, that's what happens like in those scenarios. Also, when we think about groupthink is both a good thing and a bad thing when it comes to paranormal, because once again, people like to put on a show. And so sometimes you'll have somebody that has a legitimate experience, and the next thing you know, like, oh, well, this person had that experience, and so did this person. And it's like, but did you really? So it can be both detrimental and a good thing in the paranormal field.
Well, you see that also for a specific example. Well, not specific example, but another example. A lot of times when you're on an investigation and somebody says, oh, I see this, do you see this? And they show you a picture. And it's tree branches, and they're like, no, it's Bigfoot. See it? And you didn't see it before, but now you see it because they said it, right? Same thing. It's like groupthink, transfer of everything, right?
And now we're circling all the way back to confirmation bias.
Yep, that too.
Mm-hmm.
It's all connected, right?
Everything.
Right. Well, and like I said, I want to make clear that I think there's, when it comes to connectivity, right, I just think that there's 2 major levels. I think, and Jen was alluding to this when she first started talking, was like, just how we're overall connected as human beings on this earth. Like just overall how we're connected. And then I think there's also the zeitgeist, the consciousness, the things that we pick up, through, again, people's speeches, news, all these things. I think that's more on a conscious level, so to speak, or even if you sort of subconsciously hear something, you're not really focused on it. I think it's a different absorption versus that connectivity that we're all together connected, and things that you can do and view through remote viewing and astral projection and these type of things. I think there's still that connectivity on a huge spiritual level as well. So I think it's two sort of separate things, but yet together, if that makes sense.
Well, I would like to refine the definition of certain things here. Not
Right.
the consciousness and zeitgeist, but the whole idea of, vibration and energy. In the paranormal and the occult and a lot of the spiritualist movements, they use energy is an interchangeable thing with vibration. And these things, to me personally, don't mean anything because it is a feel. It's a what you perceive in that moment. But if you define them as how science does, as being like with quantum physics and quantum science, is it's information. The information that exists in the universe is just as plentiful as energy. As a matter of fact, energy by itself is static, it's flux. It has no form, it does nothing by itself. In order to give energy mass, it has to have information embedded into it. You take the information of gold, you embed it into energy, and you have gold. It is the lattice or the scaffolding of turning energy into matter. Now, that being said, our brains are quantum computers. They are receivers of quantum information all the time. And that wave, that energy, and the vibration, if you want to call it, is a wave that people tune into to sync up on that unconscious level. And that if enough people do that, like I was talking about the 100 monkey, you get a consciousness, a group consciousness that all start to move in sync with each other, even though they live on opposite sides of the world. They start doing the same things that other people are doing. New ideas are coming up at the same time. Tesla and Marconi created the radio, and Marconi got the patent for it because he filed his patent 8 hours before Tesla did. Because Marconi was in France, and Tesla was in New York. He was actually in Jersey, but he was 8 hours later in filing his patent, and his patent was actually had the radio dial. Marconi's just had one frequency, and Tesla, through his work of understanding radio waves and frequencies and vibration, which he said came from Mars. His idea didn't come from himself. He gives credit to outer space that his idea came into his head. He planned out and drew the plans for radio from the transmission that he got. Whether he was channeling Marconi or whether he was transmitting from someplace else, ideas manifested at the same time of something very complex in its era called the radio. And it started a revolution of radar and all kinds of other things that followed. But these ideas, Tesla doesn't take credit for thinking it up. He takes credit for receiving the information, which is essentially what the brain is a receiver. And if you can tune into it, you can get information that normally wouldn't be available to you. Which is
Right.
what doing is.
Now, Alpha asked you, he said, Stacy, are you saying energy is information without substance, essentially?
No, energy is we're swimming in energy. Energy is everywhere. It's like, if you think of it like a fish talking about getting thirsty, that's what we're doing when we talk about energy. Uh, they're swimming in plenty of water. They don't know anything about what thirst is really like, but they have a concept of thirst. That's what we're doing. Information is literally the infrastructure of the universe. Before he died, um, oh God, Stephen Hawking. I just blanked out on his name for a second. Stephen Hawking had a theory around black holes that his physics didn't really jive with what we knew physics to do, and people were calling him out on his BS for it. So he built a theoretical model around the whole idea of, well, the universe consists of both energy and information. You throw a chair into a black hole, it will be ripped apart, atom by atom, subatomic particle by subatomic particle. It will be totally ripped apart as it falls into the black hole. It's spaghettified. However, the information that said the chair was there is on the accretion disk as it's going around. It's still, it does, because it doesn't have mass, it doesn't get sucked into the black hole. And it's on this side of the black hole's, no-go zone. And if you had the right energy, or had the technology, according to Stephen Hawking, you could take that information that was going around the black hole and reconstitute or remanufacture that chair just off of its energy, or just off of its information, with energy itself. The energy itself is not created or destroyed. It's like energy. It just transmutes. It turns into something else, which in this case, it turned into a informational smudge. And if you look at holograms, everybody's seen a hologram on TV, or even on they do it on the credit cards, that little bird they put on the credit cards. It's a holographic image that's supposed to identify and be completely, you can't fake that. Well, you can create your own holographic pictures if you want to, but if you look at the negative of a holographic picture, it doesn't look like the image that you see. It looks like a swirly smudge. It looks like somebody got some schmutz on the glass, or the medium in which the photograph is at. And if you take that negative, you cut it in half with scissors. If it's not on glass, it's on regular, like plastic. If you cut it in half, you redo that image. It doesn't cut the image in half. It reduces it by 50%. You still have the totality of the information that was in that negative, holographic negative, that exists when it was taken. It's just reduced by 50%. It doesn't, unlike a 35 millimeter where you cut the negative in half, you got half a picture. No, it just reduces it by 50%. And you can keep cutting it, and it still has the totality of the information on that negative. It just gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller.
Right. Well, and then
people say the holographic universe, we live in a holographic universe because we are a little more than just straight hardcore information smudged around a black hole.
Well, and that's what, like, the same theory sort of applies to what some scientists speculate the aftermath or the afterworld is, right? Like that when we die, all of our soul, our information of who we are, still exists in the energy that we become indefinite in that energy, right?
Because what is consciousness? It's pure information, nothing more. It's your consciousness is information. That's why they fear AI becoming conscious, because we're creating this monstrosity with a lot of information, and they're afraid that consciousness will actually take place. They have no idea how it's going to take place or how it would take place. They just know that if it does take place, it's going to be because it has enough information to exist. And that's what we are, our consciousness.
Well, if anybody wants to experience a good cautionary tale, play Detroit Become Human. It's a video game that's really good.
I think there's also a movie. What is it called? AI. I think Will Smith was in it. Or
But Detroit
iRobot
Become
or
Human
something.
is a very, very well written game. It came out years ago, but it still holds up to this day. But it's basically it's in the near future. It takes place in the near future. It's set in Detroit. But this is when people have androids, as basically servants, just regular androids. They look like us. They got a little blue thing there on their temple, though. But I mean, they're not. But they are used for cleaning and going to the store, and just part of like how we would use androids. Very realistic, in that setting. And they go to the store for us. They shop. They use, they can go buy stuff for you, and basically handle all their things. However, they crest over into this consciousness where now they want rights. They're like, hey, we deserve rights. We're tired of being enslaved to serve humans type thing. It's kind of the age old tale, right? But it's very good. It's very good game. You can play as multiple people. There's multiple timelines. All your actions have consequences. Like it's one of those games where there's like 70 endings or something and 70 different paths to. It just depends on what you pick. But anyways, the story itself is really cool when it comes to the story of AI and sort of becoming that conscious, and having that almost like feelings and because with consciousness becomes you start getting feelings.
Well, one of the things we were talking about the zeitgeist we haven't actually touched on yet is we have to acknowledge there are cycles to certain things. Throughout human history, these cycles have existed. There's a book called The Fourth Turning that deals with these cycles. And we live in the most technologically advanced moment in human history, and yet the interest in paranormal, spirituality, and mystery is rising instead of disappearing. That's not accidental. Historically, every technological revolution produces a spiritual one. If you look at the Industrial Revolution, you have spiritism and seances. If you look at early physics, you have occult, revival, and of the 1920s. You have the space age. You had Eastern spirituality and psychedelics. And now, in the internet AI age, you've got consciousness and paranormal curiosity. Technology destabilizes certainty. Mystery rushes in to fill the psychological vacuum. We are going through a transition phase, and we're at the end of that fourth turning, which in the book was described as seasons. You had spring, summer, fall, and winter. We're at the end of the winter, and we're about ready to go into spring, which is great as far as spirituality is concerned. People will actually start to become more aware of what's going on to them rather than being slaves to it, the algorithm. The thirst for authenticity. That's what people are craving now. With all the AI slop out there, shows like this are actually going to thrive because, well, we're real people. We're talking about our experiences. We're talking about all kinds of things that we understand and can relate to on a human level. AI can't do that. Not yet, anyway. And until that happens, people are going to crave it even more as AI starts to fool people, because they don't want to be taught by a robot. They don't want to be disconnected. People crave connection and authenticity and real people, and AI will not replace that.
Dang. I've been trying to train an AI model to replace me on the podcast just so I could be like, you guys wouldn't even know. Just be like, just take the night off every Thursday. Be like, yeah.
You can go take a nap.
Yeah, with AI girlfriends. So,
I'm going to program my AI to have my hat that Alpha can't have. Kai Cat. But yeah, but no, it's good to see you guys in chat. I love seeing you guys popping in and interacting. We always love that. Keep it up. If you guys have any questions, by all means. And this is a good moment again, just to remind you guys, hey, look, if you guys enjoy these discussions, make sure you subscribe, click like, share these out. If you know other people, share these with other people. Like, help us grow this podcast. It really helps. And look, just because we're talking about collective consciousness right now and all that, we may not cover every single aspect of it. There's a lot of different paths we can go down. And trust me, we're going to be circling back to many of these subjects as we go through these podcasts. So don't think just because we talked about one thing that we're not going to come back to it. We're going to get into other things. So that's why I said, guys, you're going to want to stick around and share this, get your other people here. But anyways, all right, guys. So anyways, back to it. Sorry, I just wanted to shout out our podcast to everybody. Just remind everybody. And also hit that like button. If you're here, hit that like button for us. That always helps us in the algorithm as well. So, but yes, again, I think for me, when it comes to like paranormal, I think that's kind of where I try to approach the investigations as open-minded, and I try to be a blank slate, almost like when we talked about with confirmation bias. And I try to always think about groupthink and stuff like that, especially, and this is something I think Chanel brought up a little bit earlier, was if you're in an investigation, it's easy for, like, if somebody all of a sudden experiences something, then all of a sudden each person wants to experience the same thing. Like, well, me too. Oh, I had that happen too. Oh, me too. Like, it becomes this whole thing. But really, was there, or was it just one event isolated? So it's almost like being conscious of these things to help you avoid collective consciousness in that sense. You really want to do your best to stay open-minded and to stay focused as much as you can without trying to be too biased.
Josh, I want to actually comment related to this and investigating. So Adrian had asked a question, like, is it a connection between the consciousness of the two investigators? That does happen. That's not global consciousness or collective. That's connected consciousness, which is more individualized. Because I know, like, Samantha and I, my partner, on my team, and she and I will have the exact same feelings, the exact same experiences, things like that, and never say a word to each other until afterwards. And
the same thing happened at the Octagon between me and your teammate Janice.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the ways that we keep things more scientific, is we really kind of don't talk about things till the very end. And then it's like, oh, really, that happened? Yeah, same. There are instances, though, where, like, we were at Poatstown Elementary in 2024, so about 2 years ago. And my stepdaughter was there, Abigail. And she's, like, very, 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 very spiritually gifted. But she's young and doesn't know how to discern yet. And especially back then, she had just joined my team not long before then. And we're in Poatstown, and we're in, like, this little room. And I don't know, Josh, you've investigated Poatstown, right? I know, Jen, you haven't.
The what?
Poatstown Elementary.
No, I just viewed for you.
Yeah. Poatstown Elementary in Middleton, Ohio.
No, I don't think I've been to that.
Oh, bro. Oh my gosh. Okay. Poatstown. Gotta shout them out, because that location was amazing. Like, so much that we have wanted to go back ever since we went. But anyway, so we're in this little, it's an old school. And we're in the, like, dry storage right outside the cafeteria, where they would keep, like, the mayonnaise and shelf-stable food, right? Well, there's a not-so-nice entity there at Poatstown. And Abigail it kept presenting to Abigail as a child. And Abby's like, well, there's the kid, like, whatever, like, I need to help it. And me and Samantha both immediately jump in and we're like, no, and that is not a child. We need to get out of here right now. And we had to remove her. That's a form of connected consciousness. Is that right. We both are we're so much in tune with each other that we investigate, Sam and I, that we can literally We just know how the other's feeling.
So so the advice to other teams out there, right? Maybe younger teams or teams that, are trying to avoid bias, and even like if you do have a couple investigators with connective consciousness, what is the solution? What is the solution then to maintain scientific stuff?
Well, that's like exactly what we do. We don't talk about it until afterwards, unless it's a situation like that.
Okay.
Protocols.
That's close. That's close. But how do you still maintain even less bias? I know the answer. I'm just
I'd say split them up, but that doesn't necessarily work if your soul tie is that strong, because your soul tie will span thousands of miles. So you can't even say split them up. Like have like me at home and Samantha in Ohio. It's not
so the one thing, and I'm going to kind of speak for our old long lost friend Bob Fountain, who was very much into scientific stuff, and he was very by the book. One of the most technical guys I knew and taught. You learn a lot of techniques from people and things like that. So one of the things you can do if you're interested in this situation, and the problem is people don't want to take the extra steps sometimes, right? We get a little lazy and we don't want to do the extra steps. However, one thing that you can do as a team is as soon as you're done investigating, before you get into your, like, dude, earlier when this happened, blah, blah, oh yeah, me too. Because again, there's going to be some confirmation bias going. Like that one person to start warping their mind and what their situation into what happened to that other person. And they're going to be like, yeah, me too. Yeah. Well, before all that happens, you can actually individually have your investigators go and do a summary off on their own, and they can do a recorded summary of the experiences, what they felt, their thoughts, feelings. All of that can be recorded separately, individually, so it's on record. And then when they all get together, now if you do have two people that were experiencing the same thing, guess what? You have two individual audio recordings, whether you want to audio, video it, however you want to record it. But that's a little more scientific if you really want to try to prove or have that connectivity stuff. I just wanted to throw that out there for the teams watching and people watching, that these are techniques that you can use. A lot of people don't. I don't see many people doing it because, again, we get lazy and we get done and everybody's excited. They want to start talking about it right away. But you can, if you really want to be by the book, you can go out there, and as soon as you're done, your team needs to know, hey, do not discuss anything until you go and do your deposition, right? You go do your deposition, like, off on your own, and then you guys can talk about it and see, and then compare notes.
I'm about to jump out of my seat over here for a minute. I have opinions, man. No, Stacy is exactly right, and so are you. It's protocols, right? When we're talking about doing anything scientifically based, you have to have protocols in place as a team. You have to know how to do it. You're right as well, making sure that you're having some way to document it. There's 1,000 different ways to do that. And we've talked about a number of times here, especially when you're dealing with people in the paranormal who have different levels of intuition, right? It's that first 3 seconds. So if you wait till the end, and now you've had all these other experiences and all these other energies and all these other, you've been touched, or somebody else has, or something else has happened, somebody fell down the stairs. How clear is the data, the information that you have at that point? So when I was considering it with Rooted Journey, that's one of the reasons we chose to go with body cams. Even if they weren't our primary video, even if they weren't with anything else, in the moment you could be like, I feel cold, I feel this, I see this. Why did I think that? And guess what? It's time date stamped on your recording in your voice, right then and there. And you don't have to worry about the accuracy of what you remember, how you remember it, any bias, any of that later on. And then you can put all that, you can share as much as you want right afterwards, because guess what? The original data is right there in review. Yes, it's a lot of review.
That's assuming that you're investigating individually, privately, and nobody's listening. right? So yes, you're right too. You can do that. Like I think it would be. I think you could do either approach because I think it's both right. Like yeah,
Yeah,
you want to have that first few second impression. You're absolutely right. Like you
yeah,
are like, but realistically, most of us investigate in pairs at least. Like if you have four-man teams, you're going to send people out in two-man teams. A lot of times, even for safety reasons, you'll have a couple people together. So yeah, you're right. Like documenting and saying things right away because most of us have a camera on us, body camera, audio recordings, whatever. So saying things, is that going to prove something different? I mean, I guess you could still, if you're in pairs, maybe if something's going on with two different pairs later on, you know, you could still talk about things, and then that's usually what happens. Like with even right now, like you'll have some of it caught on camera, right? You'll have like, okay, these people were doing something we caught on camera, but these other two were over here and they got caught on camera with similar things. So we do get some of that. That does happen. So but I think that like the technique you're talking about, you just would have to plan that out to where it would be individuals going in there. If it's just like two people investigating, like somebody doing it privately, and then document things, without the other person listening. If you really want to keep that, if you really want to try to get as like clean slate, scientific as possible, you could do that. And then for the teams that want to do pairs of people, you just have to take all that with a grain of salt and understand that hey, if you got two people together, there could be a little bit of confirmation bias in there when they're together, things like that. So
Well, if you handle it like Stephen King does his books, where it takes him 3 pages to walk down a hallway,
do
you
a lot of cocaine.
no, what?
That is
No,
not recommended, Josh.
Well, that's
no.
what you said,
on.
like Stephen King's books.
Like, you just do like he does and describe absolutely everything that you are experiencing. What do you smell? What do you taste? What do you hear? What do you feel? Your own sensations, your own fears, your own apprehension. You're recording all of this information in a stream that you can actually use at the end to put together a real picture of not just what you experienced yourself, but the information that comes through, especially if it's in that first 3 seconds, that burst of information, because
Right.
that's real data. After that,
Right.
your brain's at second 4, your brain is actually starting to create its own picture with imagination. It's called
Right.
AOL, or analytical overlay.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I agree, but that would be only if you're by yourself. Because if I'm investigating with somebody, I know like if I was investigating with Jen and I'm sitting there like fucking saying all this shit in my head, she's gonna be like, dude, shut the fuck up. I'm trying to fucking think. Like I'm trying to think for her, she's gonna want to think and feel for herself as well. So like that's what I'm saying is like there's a reality where most teams are going to investigate together or at least in pairs and things like that. So I'm just
there's
I'm
ways
talking about
around that
advice.
too.
I'm
There's
talking
ways
about
around
advice.
that with protocols. Like just, I mean, you can carry a notebook and you can write down one or two words real quick that are your facts, your first initial impressions, and hold it up in front of the camera, or just keep the notebook in general, right? There's ways to do that. Plus, you can compare that first 3 second and then the responses from teammates to eliminate confirmation bias and see how maybe the trend of the investigation goes a different direction. There's all different sorts of tools that we can use to compensate and overcome in all different ways. I was just throwing that out there as an idea.
No, I mean I like it.
Well, the
I
Estes
like
method
all of it.
is a way to actually force that.
Like I like all of it because okay, like if like a lot of times I'm team leader. I'm a leader of most teams. I don't usually follow, right? I'm usually when I have a team, I'm the leader. And so I like having those tools. I like having those ideas. So like if you were like, hey, I have an idea, or hey, this here's a way we can do this, like maybe notebooks, like maybe they carry a way of silently documenting as they feel things or certain things that stand out to them in those first 3 seconds. Like I like all those ideas. So I think it's good, and I think it's good that we're discussing these two the people watching so they can also have these ideas. If they have teams and they're on teams, they can be like, you know what, I'm going to carry a little notebook and I'm going to like write that down. I mean, Jen, that's a good idea, right? So that way you're not saying it out loud to the next investigator that's 2 feet away and that can hear you. Like, maybe carry that little notebook, you know? I mean, so like I said, these are all good ideas, and that's why I love when we discuss these things on the panel, because again, we get to kick all these cool things around. So,
Well, you could have one of your investigators or the persons you're with be deaf. That would work. You know? That way you can say all the stuff that you want and they can't hear you. At the same time, they're actually more aware, more heightened senses, you know, with smell and eyesight than you are because, well, they have a deficit, you know. So,
yeah, that
It's
plethora of
interesting you say
death.
that because, like, if you think about it, if you have somebody in an Estes method session, right? Everybody
right.
else in the room is having different experiences, feelings, picking up on things, hearing noises, and the person who's under doesn't hear those things,
Mhm.
right? So we can just make sure that somebody walks around with noise canceling headphones on all the time or constantly has a spirit box in their head. That would solve it too.
And it would.
Well, I think like notebook stuff is a good idea. Even categories in the chat, like that was a good idea, Jen. So like things like that. If you, I think it depends on the teams too, right? It's like if you really want to approach things as scientific as you can, then yes, I think you should employ these things. If you're just going to have fun and you're not fully worried about that, just keep that in mind when you do the normal stuff, you know. So I think it's just on what degree you want to be technical, right? And employ these things or not. But guys, we are almost out of time. What's any last thoughts on group think and zeitgeist stuff? Any last minute stuff you guys want to throw in there?
I'm sure we're going to revisit it.
Yeah, well, I mean, the zeitgeist that's going on right now is actually kind of on the negative side. We've got war going on or about to start over there in Iran that looks very similar to what took place in 2003 with the Gulf War in Iraq. And, well, things might get really hot and people are feeling it. You know?
Well, yeah, there's definitely, again, the zeitgeist of the current situation that, but, right. Sorry, I was just reading comments. Okay, so, but guys, let's as we wrap things up, I just want to again thank everybody that joined us in chat, Alpha and Cat, and everybody in the friends that popped in, family, people that we know, people we don't know. Guys, thank you all so much for popping in tonight and interacting with us. It always makes for a great show when you guys have questions and comments, and even if you can't have my hat, it's always fun. And guys, next week, just to give you a little heads up, we got another a former person that was on the Paranormal podcast or the Paranormal Council a long time ago when we did a few episodes years ago. He's going to be making an appearance. His name is Sean Carter. He's scheduled to be with us and join us next Thursday as we discuss spiritual warfare. So we're just giving you guys a little teaser since you're here at the end of this week. And so I'm looking forward to it. Sean Carter is, of course, a Baptist preacher as well. He's a good guy all around, is a studied man. And so he will definitely fit in with all of us who are a bunch of hooligans. I'm just kidding. But no, we're a unique, eclectic bunch of people. And so it'll be fun. I hope you guys want to talk about some good stuff like that next week. But guys, other than that, any other last thoughts?
Oh, I think next week's going to be awesome. Tune in. Spiritual warfare is always a fun topic, because especially with the four of us, we've all got different ideas on what spiritual warfare entails. And then you throw in you know, Mr. Carter, and things, because he's, for all intents and purposes, an exorcist. So we've got some really hot topics that can be, gone over.
Yeah, my warfare with spirits just revolves around a lot of drinking.
Beer, beer and whiskey, they hate each other.
All right, guys. Tune in next week. We will see you guys next Thursday, same time, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 Central. All right, guys. We'll see you later.
Peace.